Hello, and welcome to this edition of Synth Tutorial with Computer Music. In this tutorial, we're going to be creating a 10th bass sound using our Zebra CM plugin. So grab yourself a copy, open up your DAW, and let's get cracking. The first thing we need to do is perform an initialize on the plugin itself, and we do this by moving to the display, which is in the upper part of the synthesizer, click and come down to the word init at the bottom. This will default all of the parameters on the synth, meaning we have a level playing field to start creating our patch. At this point, it's going to be a really good idea to turn down the master volume on the Zebra CM. And the best way to do this is go down to the bottom right-hand corner of the plugin, where you'll see there's a master pot. Drag that to a 12 o'clock position, and hopefully you should see the value of 50 in the upper display. And worth mentioning at this stage that any time we make a parameter change and we click on a pot or another setting, you'll see that parameter is mirrored as a value in the upper display, and we will refer to that quite a bit throughout the tutorial. Let's begin creating our sound by going to oscillator number 1. We're going to use a couple of the defaults which are already set. Firstly, we need to make sure we have a sawtooth, which should be the default, and secondly, the volume should be set to a value of 100, also the default. Where we will need to make some alterations is with the aliasing of the waveform. We do this by clicking on the number 4 so that it becomes highlighted in turquoise. This now means that we have 4 waveforms piled on top of each other, and it will give us a sound like this. It's a little bit on the phased side to say the least, but we can do something about that by moving to the detune pot, which is also in the oscillator 1 section, and changing that to a value of 5. And it spaces out the tuning of the 4 alias waveforms very nicely. Now we can move over to oscillator number 2, where we're going to perform some similar alterations. First of all, we're going to leave our waveform set as a sawtooth, but we do need to increase the volume of oscillator 2. We don't want it to be quite as loud, so we're going to drag this up to a value of 73. Also utilising some aliasing, we're going to click on the number 2, so we have just 2 waveforms layered on top of each other. And we can detune those once again by going to the detune pot in the oscillator 2 section, and we will give these a minus value of just -3. At the moment we have 6 waveforms all summed on top of each other and detuned, sounding like this. The next step is where we'll begin to hear the character of our 10th bass. Go to the tuning pot in the oscillator 2 section, which is directly above the waveform. Click and drag this so that it reads a value of 28 in the upper display. It should now mean you hear a sound like this. Now we were actually lying ever so slightly when we said a 10th bass. To be more accurate, this is a 10th bass plus an octave. The 10th relates to the position of the second oscillator in the diatonic scale. If it was in the same octave, it would be a third. If it was 1 octave higher, it would be a 10th. This is actually 2 octaves higher, so strictly speaking, it's an 18th. But this isn't a term that you'll hear very often, so we'll keep it as a 10th bass because everyone knows what that is. Now we can start to work with a filter. So move over to the right-hand side of the plugin, where you'll find the filter section, and click on the filter display to reveal the drop-down. We want the low-pass Vintage 2 filter. Once selected, go to the cutoff pot and change that to a value of 86. We're also going to initiate some overdrive distortion on this patch, and we can do this from the drive pot, which is also located in the filter section. Click and hold on that pot and drag it to a value of 18. We also want to create a little bit of filter bite with each articulation of our sound, and we do this by going to the user assigned but currently assigned to envelope 2 pot, which is at the bottom of the filter section. We actually want to use envelope 2, so we can leave this pot set as it is, but change it to a value of 63. We'll now have a sound like this. To further enhance our sound with modulation, we're going to use LFO1, heading in the direction of the filter. Whilst we're in the filter section, we can set our second user assignable pot so it's ready to go. Go to the currently unassigned user pot on the bottom right hand side here, and click the drop down so you can select LFO1 from the menu. Once you've done that, change the pot value to a value of just 14. Now we can make our LFO settings from the LFO section itself. You'll see that it's currently set to a sine wave, which we want to leave, with a rate currently set at 100, which we also want to leave. Do make sure, incidentally, that you're looking at LFO1. You should be, because that's the default, and you can confirm this by seeing it highlighted in turquoise. Where we want to make a subtle alteration is in the sync rate. Moving to the sync box, select the value which is described as quarter trip. This means it's a quarter note, or a crotchet, triplet value. It now means that when you play your note, you should hear the LFO modulation taking effect. And finally, we just need to make some alterations to our envelope controls. Envelope 1 is controlling the amplitude or volume of our sound, and we need to make the following alterations. Make sure the attack pot is set to a value of 0, decay set to a value of 50, sustain is set to a value of 100, and finally release set to a value of 26. Envelope 2, if you recall, is heading in the direction of our filter. We need to make some alterations here as well. Once again, check that attack is set to 0, change decay to a value of 53, sustain is going to be set to a value of 0, and finally release can be set to a value of 17. It now means that we have a sound like this. Being a bass sound, it's going to be very wise to add a little bit of compression. We're using an 1176 shaped compressor here because it's particularly good at bringing out those low-end frequencies. But that's it for this time. We'll see you in our next tutorial.